Why there are lots of protests in Israel. Thousands of people have taken to the streets of Israel evening to protest against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's controversial reforms to the country's judicial system. Chanting, "The country is on fire," demonstrators gathered outside Mr. Netanyahu's residence in Jerusalem on Sunday evening to demand the draft legislation be withdrawn, only to be dispersed by police water cannons. Bonfires were meanwhile lit along Tel Aviv's biggest motorway, forcing road closures and causing traffic mayhem. On Monday, the protests continued, while Israel's largest union, Histadrut, which represents 700,000 workers across a huge variety of professions, called for an immediate general strike. Universities have closed their doors until further notice, and flights from Tel Aviv's Ben Gurion airport have been grounded, as pressure grows to halt the legislation. Joe Summerlod explains why protests have started in Israel. Israeli embassies worldwide. Israeli embassies worldwide were instructed to join a strike on Monday against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's judicial overhaul plan, a workers' union letter seen by Reuters said. The letter, citing a nationwide strike in Israel declared by the Histadrut Labor Federation, said foreign ministry activities in the country and abroad would be limited to emergency services. Mass protests in Israel after Netanyahu sacks defense minister. 12:35, Joe Middleton. Protesters have taken to the streets in Israel after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu sacked his defense minister. The country has faced weeks of mass protests over controversial plans to overhaul the judiciary. Mr. Netanyahu fired Yoav Gallant on Sunday, the 26th of March, after the retired army general called for a halt to the reforms. "The security of the State of Israel has always been and will always remain the mission of my life," Mr. Gallant said. Opposition leader Yair Lapid said the sacking is a new low for the government. Israel's justice minister backs Netanyahu on judicial overhaul. 11:56, Joe Middleton. Israel's justice minister said he would respect any decision Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu makes about the future of a bitterly contested judicial overhaul, adding that lack of unity in the government could bring it down. A situation in which everyone does as they wish is liable to bring about the instant fall of the government and collapse of the ruling party, Likud, Yariv Levin said in a statement. "We must all strive to stabilize the government and coalition." Two main ports in Israel stop work. 11:10, Joe Middleton. Two main ports in Israel have announced that they had stopped work in adherence to a labor strike in protest at the religious nationalist government's judicial overhaul. Haifa and Ashdod ports said in separate statements that work was halted after Israel's main labor union announced a general strike earlier on Monday until Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stopped judicial legislation. Netanyahu government survives no confidence vote in parliament. 10:11, Maryam Zakir Hussein. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's religious nationalist coalition government on Monday survived a no-confidence motion filed by the opposition in protest at its judicial overhaul plan. The motion failed by a vote of 59 to 53, the Knesset speaker said. Israel ally U.S. says it is deeply concerned by protests. 9:57, Maryam Zakir Hussein. The developments were being watched in Washington, which is closely allied with Israel yet has been uneasy with Netanyahu and the far-right elements of his government. National Security Council spokesperson Adrian Watson said the United States was deeply concerned by the developments in Israel, which further underscore the urgent need for compromise. Democratic values have always been, and must remain, a hallmark of the U.S.-Israel relationship, Watson said in a statement.